I just wanted to say that I wouldn't look to the king as an example of what a father should be. Throughout stages of Harry's life, he hasn't been the father that Harry, needed, whether it be, stopping Harry walking behind Princess Diana's coffin or stepping in.
When that happened, I know I mentioned that, it wasn't for about 10 years that people said, that was a bit off, making the kids do that. At the time, none of us said that. I didn't think it until somebody said 10 years later, that should never have happened. But anyway, Val, you think he's not been a good dad?
Yes, and if you look at also when Harry, his son, says to him, I need to get out of the family business. I need to go and earn my own living. He did nothing. He didn't step in and be the father that Harry needed to say, yes, let's find a way through this. Let's sort this out. Yeah, go and do your own thing, son. He stood back and everything was taken away from his son. So Harry's reacting in anger. He was stripped of everything.
We're not here to throw casual shade. We're here to tell the truth, the whole truth, and let the chips fall where they may. Val didn't stutter, and neither will we. When Val called into the Jeremy Vine show, she didn't make a royal blunder. She delivered a royal revelation. She cut through decades of carefully manicured palace PR and said what history has already shown us. King Charles failed Harry, not once, not twice, over and over again. Let's start in 1997. Prince Harry was 12, the same age many kids are still learning how to cope with school stress, trying to figure out who they are, needing bedtime hugs and morning pancakes. And yet Harry wasn't even allowed the dignity of private grief. His mother, the only parent who offered unconditional love, was gone in a flash. What did his father do? He let the firm march his son behind a coffin. A boy, behind his mother's coffin, publicly, televised, like a state prop. Now the palace can spin this as tradition all they want, but let's be clear, that decision wasn't about duty. It was about optics. It was about preserving the image of a stoic, united monarchy. The pain of a grieving child was not the priority. The spectacle was, and King Charles, then Prince of Wales, could have said no. This is too much, he's a child, but he didn't. And that's not just a passive failure, that's an active choice. What Val reminded the public is that there is nothing noble about emotional neglect. There is no badge of honor in failing to comfort your own child because your title demands a stiff upper lip. That's not strength. That's cowardice disguised as custom. And the damage didn't stop there. Harry grew up in a cold, choreographed world where hugs were replaced with headlines and family time was scheduled like a press briefing. And while Diana tried, Lord, she tried, to inject normalcy, compassion, and real human connection into Harry's life, once she was gone, it was Charles and the crown. And neither offered the kind of love a boy needed. The man who was meant to protect him let him walk into the lion's den of British tabloids without armor. From Eton to Afghanistan, to his early 20s being hounded, dissected, harassed. Where was Charles? Where was the fierce, protective love we expect from a parent? Nowhere. Because the palace preferred to trade stories with the press. Sacrifice one son to shield another. That's not rumor. That's documented. Remember the infamous heir and spare dynamic? That wasn't invented by the press. It was reinforced by the palace. Charles always centered William. And Harry? Harry was used as a buffer, a distraction, a scapegoat when convenient. That's why the press got bolder. That's why the headlines got nastier. Because nobody from inside the palace told them to stop. When Harry's mental health began to fray, panic attacks, anxiety, depression, what did Charles do? Did he sit his son down, offer comfort, help him find healing? No, he reportedly told Harry to just play the game, to ride it out. When Harry asked for therapy, it wasn't encouraged, because emotions were a liability, not something royal men were supposed to have. So when Meghan came into the picture and actually saw Harry, not as a prince, but as a man with scars, she did something Charles never did. She chose him. She protected him. She valued his emotional safety over public performance. And honestly, that's when the palace lost control. Because Harry tasted something he never had growing up: empathy. The royal machine painted Meghan as the villain, but the real threat wasn't her personality. It was her refusal to be silent while Harry suffered. It was her refusal to be broken the way Charles allowed Harry to be broken. And let's talk about recent times, because Charles's failures didn't stop in Harry's childhood. They've continued. After the Oprah interview, when Meghan admitted to suicidal thoughts, when Harry spoke about his trauma, did Charles release a statement of compassion? No. He went silent, cold, distant, again. During Queen Elizabeth's funeral, Charles reportedly asked Harry not to bring Meghan, not because of protocol, but because of appearances. Even in mourning, Harry was being managed like a threat, not embraced as a son. When Lilibet was born, did Charles visit, celebrate, welcome her? No. He allowed that milestone to be overshadowed by palace drama. His own grandchild was introduced to the world under tension, suspicion, and whispered disdain. And then came the skin color revelations, raised not by Meghan and Harry, but by a royal insider. And to this day, Charles has not offered a genuine reckoning. Silence again. Protect the brand, not the bond. Even Harry's attempt at a peace summit in 2025 was leaked to the press, before they even finished talking. And what did Harry's team say? That it was a jeopardizing breach of trust. Do you know how damning that is? For a man to seek reconciliation with his father, only to be burned again by the very palace machinery that Charles now controls? And through all of this, Charles expects to be seen as the wounded party, the victim of a disobedient son. But Val, God bless Val, reminded us that the real victim was the boy forced to become a brand, the boy whose grief was public property, the man who was punished for loving his family enough to break the cycle. When you hold that much power as a parent, as a monarch, and you still choose performance over protection, you don't get to be surprised when your son walks away. Because guess what? Harry isn't broken, he's brave. He's raising his children with hugs, not handlers, with boundaries, not briefing books. He looks at Lilibet and Archie and says, "You will never be used for optics. You will never be dragged behind a coffin. You will never smile for cameras while your heart is breaking." And that, my friends, is what real leadership looks like. That's not rebellion, that's revolution. So yes, Val spoke truth. King Charles failed. Not because he wasn't born with love in his heart, but because he refused to act on it when it mattered most. And no title, no crown, no coronation choir can change that. In the end, Harry didn't leave the royal family. He left royal neglect. And he built a new family, one where love isn't conditional on silence, where healing is more important than hierarchy. So when the world tries to shame Harry for walking away, remember this. He didn't leave to escape responsibility. He left because no one else took it. And that is the kind of man Diana raised. That is the kind of father Charles never was. And that is the kind of royalty we choose to honor.